the upgrade path is the first SOU of 11.1 rather than 11.1 itself. That's all that means. Now, a typical customer update path, we don't expect every customer to install every SOU. That's just too much work. What we expect is at some stage, customer might update, might go to from Solaris 10 to 11.1, take a couple of SOUs, then after 11.2 ships, at some stage update to an SOU on that frame, and then work their way up that way. So whether it's every 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months of applying bug fixes, it will go up that train. And that's exactly the same as we had in Solaris 10. So in Solaris 10, if you remember, the kernel patch IDs used to change after every update, and that's simply because we're popping up that ladder. Any questions on that? Okay. So, Solaris 10 maintenance overview. As I said, we typically released updates once or twice a year. Very intensely tested, and tested by dozens of QA groups right across Sun, from performance, functional regression, cluster, patch, system test, you name it. Also tested by database and lots of other teams, of course. As I said, we had some very extensive enhancements in Solaris 10 updates, and we had really, really large jumbo kernel patches associated with the result. And that's because the features basically glued the code together through mutual interdependencies, and so we ended up with these very large kernel patches. And that's why we had this process we called rejuvenation, which was to break them back up into their constituent pieces. And therefore you got this progression of different kernel patch IDs as we had this great lump of a feature kernel patch, and then smaller sustaining kernel patches until the next update. They always included all available bug fixes as well as a lot of new ones, and they provided high quality stepping stones to new and improved functionality. What we recommended in Solaris 10 was, in the major maintenance windows, is to update to a later update release. Update 10 is the current one, and then add the latest recommended patch set on top of that to give all the latest critical fixes. In minor maintenance windows, simply add the recommended patch set and whatever you might need specific to your environment. And then in break fix situations, just apply the individual patches that are needed. Now, the problem we had is with 4,500 patches a year, pretty much every customer and probably every system was on a different patch level. It's what Bart Schmolders calls dim sum patching, from the Chinese buffet where you take a bit of that and a bit of that and a bit of that. Or we would call it a la carte over here in Europe. But it's unique software combinations where you take a kernel patch that's 3 months old and maybe use it with a zone ADMD that's 18 months old, and I think I'll have a libc that's 6 months old. Fine. But it could be unique. Now, we have extremely strict and onerous processes in-house to make sure that that will work. Very strict rules on patch dependencies and catching those correctly. So even though it's a unique combination, pretty much guaranteed to work. But you could have, it could expose a latent race condition that's just seen on that system or just seen on that hardware that no one else has seen, and that can take a long time to debug because it is unique. And really we feel that that model, that uniqueness, provides a suboptimal customer experience. It gives great flexibility, but is it really the optimal experience for customers? Solaris 11, if that looks very similar, it is. It's exactly the same concept. Once or twice a year, intensely tested, new features, new hardware, all of the bug fixes. It'll update the existing packages, it may introduce new packages, and again provides high quality stepping stones to new and improved functionality. It's exactly the same concept as Solaris 10, it's just the delivery mechanism has changed. So in Solaris 11, we...
Can I ask just one thing there?
Yeah.
Because effectively you've got kernels, if you do, let's say you're on update 7 at the moment, and you apply recommended whatever, you sort of, you end up, with a sort of update 7 with a fairly recent kernel.
Yeah, it'd be a post U10 kernel, yeah.
Yeah. But at the same time, in 11, if I'm right from what you're saying, is in fact you actually have the packages all related to 11, so that wouldn't quite be the same thing, would it?
With 10, you apply the recommended patch set.
Yeah.
You've got the post U10 kernel.
Yeah.
So that kernel is up to date, and it'll drag quite a lot of other stuff with it, because certainly the U10 features will drag a lot of other stuff with it. But it's not quite U10, not quite U7. It's somewhere in between. And depending on what other patches you applied, it may be more that way, or whatever else. But I can guarantee you that combination probably hasn't been tested as a unit. Whereas with the SOUs, it's been tested as a unit in-house by Oracle.
Well, so that being said, to build on that, historically you had the different hardware releases. And if I wanted to get some of the new functionality, or I wanted to maybe have my my flash archive or something like that support new hardware, I always had to generate, a new build, or I had to do, live grade upgrade to get to that new hardware release, rather than just having it be the old hardware release with the new recommended patch set. So with IPS then, I'm assuming that's all gone away, and effectively I could always patch or do the SRUs to get me to what would effectively be in Solaris 10 terms to be a new hardware release.
Yeah, effectively. I mean, you're using BEADM, so it'll be an alternative boot environment, and then it's simply a reboot whenever you want to activate that to the newer functionality level. And therefore, whether you're patching bug fixes in an SRU, or whether you're upgrading to an update release, it's exactly the same in Solaris 11. Exactly the same commands, exactly the same function. It's just how much change delta you're taking is the only difference.
So just to go back to 10, are you saying then if you're going to patch a 10 system, you really ought to take it to the latest U release and then apply your latest recommended patch cluster?
In your major maintenance windows, so if you're rolling out new hardware, if you're doing a major upgrade, then apply it. If you're just doing a bug fix update, then it would typically be just the recommended patch set.
But if we're doing that, you're saying you can end up with a mismatch of...
Yeah, but I mean, again, because we have very rigorous processes for code dependencies and making sure patch dependencies are correct, it is extremely rare for dim sum patching to cause issues. The only case might be where there's sort of latent race conditions, where there's always been an error there, but it's just that exact software combination on that exact hardware just exposes it, whereas it's invisible on everything else. But we do have very rigorous processes, and therefore issues with dim sum patching are extremely rare. But we just, again, it's just complexity for the sake of complexity. What's the point? It gives flexibility, but to what end? And that's where we're looking really at a simplified approach here. Especially for the less technical, the less nerdy sysadmins who don't really want the complexity of well, I think I prefer that libc than this libc. Just press a button and off it goes. So, as I say, we really want to avoid replacing dim sum patching with dim sum packaging, and therefore the idea is that the SRU is applied as a unit. It's being tested together. Again, one of the things here is, if lots of customers are applying the same thing, if there's an issue, it's going to be found very fast. It'll be reported fast, it'll be diagnosed fast, it'll be fixed fast. It's not this sort of uniqueness of somebody seeing something that no one else has ever seen. And we believe this is going to give a better customer experience, both through the safety in numbers and running what we've actually tested. Now, customers can still minimize or harden systems. If the security is an issue, you can remove the packages you don't need. That's not an issue. Just remove what's not needed on the system. Every third SRU, so the SRUs are released monthly, and every third SRU is what we call a critical patch update. So critical patch updates is an Oracle standard, where they release a critical patch update for everything from Fusion middleware to 11.02. We've been doing it for Solaris 10 for the last 2 years, doing it in Solaris 11 here as well. And every layer of that product in the stack releases on the same day, which was actually yesterday. Yesterday was CPU day. And what the security team does is, for non-public vulnerabilities, they'll update the national security database about a week before the CPU date. And that's when they'll flag, by the way, here's security issues, and by the way, the fix is coming out, or comes out on Tuesday. And because of that, that drives adoption of the CPU. So, and the idea of the fixed date is that people can schedule their maintenance windows. They know, okay, yesterday was a CPU date, they know, well, either this weekend, next weekend, whatever else, they can schedule updates and they know they will have this latest security fixes for all of the layers of the stack. Now, whether you want to apply all of the layers of the stack in the same maintenance update is entirely up to you, but it's at least possible. And that document ID there, which you can search on MOS, provides the CVE and CVSS scores for Solaris, not just Solaris 11, but 10.9 and 8, I think 8 as well. And it'll tell you also for third-party stuff like bind or whatever else as to where the fixes are, what SRU they're in, and so on. And that set cadence, again, that's a difference between Sun and Oracle. And we're trying to combine the best of both worlds. In Sun, we still fix every security issue as fast as we possibly can. And that security issue will go into the recommended patch set or into the SRU at the earliest possible date. It's just if it's non-public, we'll only tell you about it on the CPU date. But it may have already been fixed 2 months ago and already been in the SRU or in the recommended patch set for the last 2 months. And one of the things the security team will do is if it's a common vulnerability across Solaris 9, 10, and 11, it's only when the fix is available for all 3 releases that it's publicized and say, okay, here's an issue and the fix is available on everything, because we don't want to give a pointer that we fixed it in 9 and 10, but by the way, 11 is still out there. So what we recommend for Solaris 11 customers is to apply the latest SRU in all proactive maintenance. It is the bug fix vehicle. And even in reactive situations, if it's core Solaris, if it's kernel related, if it's InfiniBand related, whatever else, really again, apply the SRU. That's been tested together, that is the unit of change. That's what we would recommend to be applied. Now, not everything in a Solaris system is actually important to the operation of Solaris itself. We couldn't care less what version of Pigeon or Mozilla or Thunderbird you're running. That's not going to affect the kernel. So with that sort of stuff, perfectly fine if you want to keep it in a different version, move it ahead, keep it behind, whatever else. That's perfectly fine. But what we really want is core Solaris, the stuff that Solaris uses itself, the stuff that's intertwined, to be kept at a unit level, at this baseline level. We believe that will provide a better customer experience. Because that's tested as a unit, it's tested intensely, and again, we get a safety in numbers effect. We've got a lot of customers on the same release. We can be confident in various situations, even with third-party hardware or IBM PowerPad or whatever else that is still working. And we believe that that simplified experience will give less administration, less issues, just simpler. Just keep it simple.
You mentioned InfiniBand. If you wanted to remove the driver for InfiniBand, could you?
So just BKG install the driver package.
BKG uninstall.
You still can do that?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
okay.
You've got nothing that requires it. Take it on.
Yeah.
There's
No, I
changes
mean,
to it.
there was a specific issue I had with a National Instruments GPIB board, and they used the driver called IP. And then, of course, InfiniBand came along and used the same driver name. And so Casper Dick worked out what the problem was, and I removed it in 10. But I didn't know whether it was possible to do that in 11.
Yeah. I mean, again, as I say, you can harden systems so you can remove what you don't need. Obviously, if you remove core OS, not a lot's going to work.
Oracle has a lot of the same rigidity with their engineered systems and Oracle Enterprise Linux in terms of how that works with Oracle database. So they have a recommended bundle for you to install the database and things like that. With having this structure in Solaris and Oracle trying to do the same things in a lot of the other areas with their operating systems, with their middleware, can you see something like IPS migrating towards OEL? Because of course you've brought D-trays, you've brought zones, you're trying to differentiate the Linux space, and RPM is has its own intricacies. Do you think that's going to be